I met the man in black the morning I asked God for work. I was kneeling beneath the bronze St. Peter, whose right foot is worn smooth by centuries of kisses, the basilica beating like a great heart around me. Tourists became a soft blur, camera shutters clicking like insects, while the choir rehearsed somewhere beyond Bernini's baldachin. I prayed the way a drowning man breathes, not delicately, not politely, but because I had no other choice. I had lost my job at the station 2 nights earlier. My landlord had given me a week. Pride would not feed me. Training would not comfort me. Only that old habit from my mother's kitchen, cross, whisper, hope, still fit my hands. The air smelled of wax and stone dust and frankincense. A candle guttered beside me, though there was no draft. The flicker synced to the pulse in my neck, brightening, dimming, brightening again. I opened my eyes, half expecting to see a priest adjusting a wick. He was not a priest. He stood 2 pews behind me, a tall figure in a black suit cut too clean for an Italian bureaucrat and too plain for a diplomat. No collar, no pin, nothing that named him. He watched me with the calm of a man observing weather. When our eyes met, he inclined his head the smallest fraction and stepped into the aisle. His shoes did not echo, though the marble should have drunk the sound, and handed it back. "Marco Bellini," he said. Not a question. I rose slowly. Old training stirred, that reflex to read doorways, distances, hands. My scar tugged under my jaw when I clenched it. "Do I know you?" "You will." His Italian was Roman, but ironed flat. He slipped a card between my fingers before I could refuse. "Come to this address at sunset. Alone." I glanced down. Thick cardstock. No ink, only a faint impression. A Latin phrase in a seal pressed deep as a wound. The phrase read silently in my mind as if spoken by a voice older than my bones. Congregatio pro doctrina fidei. The Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. Sant'Uffizio. When I looked up, he had already stepped away, vanishing behind a column as if the gray had swallowed him. A Swiss guard moved past on silent duty, halberd bright, and gave no sign he had noticed anything unusual. The choir lifted into Sanctus, 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 and the candle beside me steadied to a perfect flame. I told myself I was a fool to follow a stranger, but the card's cold weight pressed my palm like a second pulse, and the truth is, I had asked for an answer. It arrived in a suit. I left the basilica and drifted beneath the ellipse of Bernini's colonnade, where the shadows are always cooler than the day deserves. Rome shimmered beyond the columns, a curtain of heat, dust glittering in sun, vendors hawking rosaries under the saint's stone gazes. I should have gone home. I walked instead. The card burned hotter with each block. By afternoon, I sat in a narrow trattoria near Borgo Pio with a cheap espresso that had long since gone cold. I turned the card between my fingers until it blackened them. The seal was not the modern arms I'd seen on Vatican press releases. It was older, harsher. In the center, a sword and a key crossed over a book clasped shut. In the reflection of the window, I caught a shape I recognized too well. My own face, thinner than last year, eyes too alert for a man with no work. The last time I wore a uniform, it had been carabinieri gray, and the world had been simple. Orders, objectives, return. Then a door exploded outward in Naples and filled my head with glass. I left the service with a handshake, a tremor I hide with stillness, and a faith that wouldn't die even when I wished it would. I have not been a good man, but I have been a praying one. Near dusk, the bells began to call for vespers. I slipped the card into my pocket and went where it told me. The Palazzo del Sant'Uffizio sits like a stern uncle at the edge of Vatican City, its ochre walls guarded more by history than by soldiers. An old nun crossed herself as I passed, as if I were entering a storm. The guards at the gate glanced at the card and said nothing. One lifted his chin toward a side door, where an attendant waited in a gray suit without a name badge. "Bellini," the attendant said. "Yes." "This way." We walked through plain corridors that smelled of paper and lemon polish. No frescoes, no tourists' whispers, only the hush of an office that had seen centuries of secrets pass through it like smoke. At a landing, the attendant paused as if listening for footsteps that were not there, then opened a door into a room of walnut and shadow. A man stood with his back to us, hands clasped behind him. Gray hair close-cropped, shoulders square beneath red-trimmed black. He turned. Cardinal Severino Valenti was not the tallest man I had ever seen, nor the most imposing. His eyes, however, were the most precise. They weighed me, measured me, and filed the measurement away. "Signor Bellini," he said, offering no hand. "Please sit." The chair creaked when I settled. Valenti did not. He remained standing, a judge who preferred altitude. "You prayed this morning," he said. "I pray most mornings. This morning you asked for work." Heat rose up my neck. "If you had someone follow me, tell him he should at least leave a coin at the candle rack." Valenti's mouth almost smiled. "We do not follow the faithful, Signor Bellini. We watch the basilica the way sailors watch the sea." He gestured, and the attendant placed a folder on the desk between us. My name was typed on the tab. The cardinal did not open it. "You served your country," he said. "You know what it means to be sent where others cannot go. You still believe in God. You still kneel even when no one is watching. That is rarer here than you might think." I kept my face still. "With respect, Eminence, I didn't come to be flattered." "Good. Then you may yet be of use. We have a task that requires a man who understands both obedience and conscience. It will be dangerous. It will be secret. If you agree, you will not be thanked. If you refuse, you will leave by another door and forget this address by morning." "What's the task?" "Tonight, there is a service below the city. You will attend. You will be given a robe and told to kneel. You will keep your eyes down. You will say nothing unless commanded. Do you understand?" "Not at all." "Good," he said again, and this time the almost smile reached his eyes. "Ignorance is a clean bandage. Knowledge is a wound." The attendant set a different object on the desk. It was not a cross, not a rosary, but a small folded bundle of dark cloth tied with cord. The cardinal tapped it with 2 fingers. "Place this under your vest when you dress for the rite," he said. "It is for emergencies." "What kind of emergency?" I asked, though my mouth had gone dry. "The kind that tests what a man thinks he believes." Outside, the bells began their slow descent from vespers into night. Valenti's gaze did not leave mine until the last chime faded. "Sunset, Signor Bellini," he said. "The catacombs of Priscilla. Come hungry for courage and empty of questions." He turned away. The attendant opened the door. I tucked the dark bundle into my jacket and felt the weight of it settle against my ribs like a promise or a threat. On the way out, past the gray corridors and silent sentries, I wondered if God had answered my prayer or handed me a cross. The difference, I was about to learn, is a matter of how long you can carry it. The Palazzo del Sant'Uffizio does not welcome men like me. Its ochre walls stare down Borgo Santo Spirito like a sentinel that has seen too much. The morning after my meeting with Cardinal Valenti, I stood before its gates with the card pressed in my palm, wondering if I had lost my mind. The guards knew me before I spoke. One glanced at the card, the other at my face. Without a word, they led me through a side entrance, narrow and dim, where frescoes of angels flaked into dust above. Their halberds clicked once against the stone floor, then silence, as if the building swallowed sound. Inside, an attendant in gray waited. No name, no expression. He guided me down a corridor where the air thickened with the scent of paper and candle wax. Every step seemed to echo longer than it should, like footsteps following just behind us. We reached a metal detector. At first I thought it ordinary, but when I stepped through, the arch hummed, and every crucifix and medal I carried grew hot against my skin. I winced. The attendant noted it, scribbled something on a clipboard, and nodded for me to continue. "What was that?" I asked. "A test," he said. Nothing more. Beyond, the corridor descended into shadow. The walls narrowed, damp creeping from the stones. We reached a heavy door with no handle, only a symbol carved deep into its wood, a dagger crossed with a key. My stomach tightened. The attendant pressed his palm against the symbol. Locks clicked inside, heavy and deliberate. The door opened inward with a sigh, as if it had been waiting. The chamber beyond was lit by a single hanging lamp, its chain disappearing into darkness above. At the center stood a table of polished walnut. Around it, chairs. In them, men, cardinals. Their robes were black trimmed with crimson, their skull caps a sea of blood red. Each face seemed carved from stone, eyes sharp, lips pressed thin. Documents lay before them, bound in leather, pages thick as flesh. At the head sat Valenti. His gaze found me instantly. "Signor Bellini," he said, voice carrying like a gavel. "Sit." I obeyed, though my legs felt heavy. Valenti folded his hands. "You have served your country. You still kneel in prayer. You still believe. For this you have been invited to serve again, this time not Rome, but the Church itself." I kept my eyes level. "And if I refuse?" One of the cardinals to his left leaned forward, his face gaunt. "Then you will walk out of here and never remember this place. But know this, doors once opened rarely stay closed. If not you, another will come, and the burden will still remain." "Burden?" I asked. Valenti slid a folder across the table. Inside were photographs, grainy, black and white, of underground chambers, of figures in robes kneeling before altars etched with symbols I could not recognize. In one, a shadow loomed at the edge, blurred, indistinct, yet heavy with presence. My mouth dried. "What is this?" "History," Valenti said, "and future. Tonight you will descend into the catacombs of Priscilla. There you will witness what few living men have seen. You will be tested, not in skill, but in faith." A silence followed. The cardinal's eyes pinned me like knives. I swallowed. "And if I fail?" "Then you will not return," Valenti said simply. The gaunt cardinal raised a hand. An attendant entered, carrying a folded robe of black cloth. He placed it before me. The fabric was heavy, smelling faintly of oil and incense. "You will wear this," Valenti said. "You will kneel when told. You will keep your eyes lowered. You will say nothing. Do you understand?" I touched the robe. Its weight felt wrong, as if it carried more than cloth. "Yes," I said. Valenti's gaze did not waver. "Good. At sunset, you will meet us at the eastern gate. From there, the catacombs await." The meeting ended as abruptly as it began. The cardinals stood, their robes whispering like wings, and filed out through a hidden door. Only Valenti remained. He looked at me, and for the first time, his eyes softened. "You prayed for work," he said. "God answers in strange ways. Do not mistake duty for coincidence." He left me alone in the chamber, the robe still before me. I touched it once more, and beneath its folds, I felt the faint shape of something harder than cloth. Something slipped inside when I was not looking. The same bundle as last night. The weight pressed against my ribs like a secret heartbeat. I left Sant'Uffizio through a different door, into sunlight that felt dimmer than before. Pilgrims passed me on the street, laughing, buying rosaries, kissing icons. They would never know what waited beneath their feet. That night, I dressed in the robe. Its cloth clung cold against my skin. As I walked toward the eastern gate, the card pressed into my palm once more. I whispered the only prayer I still remembered by heart: "Deliver us from evil." And for the first time, I feared the answer. The Sala Regia is a hall meant for kings, but that night It belonged to shadows. I had walked its marble floors before as a tourist, craning my neck to admire Vasari's frescoes and stucco ceilings. But now the grand chamber was stripped of awe. The chandeliers hung dark. Only candles burned along the walls, their light bent low as if afraid to rise too high. The doors shut behind me with a thud that rattled the frescoes. At the long table sat half a dozen cardinals, their robes black-trimmed with scarlet. Their faces glowed pale in the candlelight, eyes catching like glass. Valenti sat among them, but tonight he was not the man who had spoken to me with cold patience. Tonight he was one voice in a choir of power. "Marco Bellini," one intoned. His Latin accent rolled like thunder. "Approach." I stepped forward, the robe heavy on my shoulders. My footsteps echoed far too loud, each one a trespass. Valenti raised a hand. "This man is the candidate." "The outsider," another corrected, his tone sharp. "Yes," Valenti said, "precisely why he may succeed where others have failed." Murmurs passed between them like rustling cloth. I stood still, spine rigid, fighting the urge to run. Finally, the oldest among them, a cardinal whose skin hung loose as parchment, leaned forward. His voice was soft but carried like a knife. "Do you believe in God, Marco Bellini?" "Yes," I said, steady. "Do you fear him?" "Yes." "Do you fear his enemies?" I hesitated. The memory of shadows and photographs burned behind my eyes. "Yes," I admitted. The old man smiled faintly, a grim curve of lips. "Then perhaps you will live." They began to speak among themselves, not directly to me, but enough for me to hear. Words slipped in Latin, in Italian, in fragments: covenant, pactum, custodians, blood and stone. I caught glimpses in their phrases, a history they did not intend me to know, of bargains made when plagues had blackened Rome, of enemies who could not be defeated by armies or prayers alone. At last, Valenti rapped his knuckles on the table. The murmurs ceased. "Tonight, you will descend into the catacombs of Priscilla," he said to me. "There you will kneel with us. You will witness the rite. If you remain standing at dawn, you will take the place appointed to you. If you do not, your name will be struck from the rolls of the living." My throat tightened. "And if I refuse now?" A cardinal with hawk-like features leaned forward. "Refusal is survival for a night. But you have already entered our circle. Do you imagine you can leave without consequence?" The words were not threat, but fact, delivered without passion. My pulse hammered anyway. Valenti's gaze softened slightly. "The robe you wear is not cloth, Bellini. It is covenant. It binds you already." The oldest cardinal gestured. An attendant stepped forward carrying a thick leather-bound book. Its cover was cracked, its clasp locked with iron. The attendant set it on the table. The old man laid a hand upon it. "The Protocol of Custodians," he said, "rules written not in ink but in blood. Tonight you will hear some of them. The rest you will learn by surviving." The book wasn't opened. The clasp remained sealed. But the weight of it pressed against me as though I carried it myself. Candles hissed, the air thickened. Valenti stood. "It is decided. Prepare the chamber below. At midnight, the rite begins." The cardinals rose as one, robes whispering like wings of ravens. Their eyes passed over me, not as men regard men, but as judges regard a condemned who may yet amuse the court. As they filed out through a side door, Valenti lingered. He approached me, his hand light on my shoulder. "You prayed for work," he murmured, echoing the words he had spoken the night before. "This is the answer. But answers are seldom what we want. They are what we deserve." He pressed something into my hand, a small iron token, cold and etched with the same dagger and key symbol I had seen on the door in Sant'Uffizio. "Keep this close," he said. "When fear blinds you, it will remind you of the path." Then he was gone. I stood alone in the Sala Regia, the frescoes above depicting battles of old, kings kneeling, armies defeated, angels triumphant. But in the candlelight, the angels' eyes seemed less merciful, the armies more like shadows. Midnight waited below the earth, and I, fool or chosen, would walk into it. The catacombs breathed like a sleeping beast. We descended narrow steps cut into rock, the air colder with every turn. Torches hissed, carried by attendants in black hoods, their flames bent as though bowing toward something deeper. The cardinals walked ahead, robes whispering, their prayers a low drone in Latin. I kept pace, the robe heavy on my shoulders, sweat prickling my spine despite the chill. My hand brushed the inside pocket where the hidden bundle lay. Its weight pressed against my ribs with the certainty of a heartbeat. At last, the stair spat us into a vast chamber carved from stone. Pillars rose like ribs arching overhead. Symbols etched into the walls gleamed faintly as if painted with unseen fire. At the center stood an altar, no gold, no marble, just a block of dark stone worn smooth by centuries of knees and blood. "Here," Valenti said. His voice echoed, swallowed, returned as a whisper. "Kneel." We obeyed. The cardinals arranged themselves in a semicircle around the altar. I knelt apart, my knees grinding into cold stone. Candles were lit, incense spilled, thick and choking, its sweetness tinged with iron. The chanting began. Low at first, then rising, the voices of the cardinals braided into something that was not song, not prayer, but command. The Latin words scraped the edges of my mind. Shadows swam along the walls, twisting into shapes that no torch cast. The floor trembled. Dust sifted from the ceiling, and then I felt it. Presence. Heavy, suffocating, pressing against my chest until each breath came shallow. The air reeked of sulfur and wet stone. From the far end of the chamber, darkness thickened. Not absence of light, but substance, blackness that moved. It coiled upward, gathering into forms. Figures emerged, tall, too tall, their limbs long and jagged, their faces blurred, horns scraping the arching roof. Eyes glowed like coals through smoke. My pulse thundered. Every instinct screamed run, but my knees were pinned as though nailed to stone. The chanting grew louder. The altar shook. One of the shadows advanced, its claw reaching toward me. I understood then I was not guest. I was offering. "No," I whispered, too soft for anyone to hear. The claw lowered toward my chest. Heat scorched my skin. The shadows around it laughed, a sound of teeth grinding glass. My hand shot instinctively inside my robe. The bundle, I tore it free, cord snapping. A dagger slid into my palm. Not military steel, not government issue. This was older. The blade was double-edged, its surface dark but veined with silver that glimmered faintly in torchlight. The hilt bore a cross worked in bronze. It hummed faintly, as though alive. The shadow recoiled an inch. Its laughter faltered. I rose, the dagger trembling in my hand. Training surged back, stance, grip, strike. I slashed upward. The blade cut through smoke flesh. Sparks flared, white and searing. The creature screamed, staggering. The others hissed, withdrawing but not fleeing. They circled, claws scraping stone, eyes burning hotter. I gritted my teeth, my voice raw. "Deliver us from evil." The dagger blazed. Silver veins pulsed, light spilling across the chamber. The shadows shrieked, covering their eyes. I struck again, driving the blade into the chest of the nearest. It convulsed, collapsing into dust and smoke. The chanting wavered. One cardinal faltered. Another barked a sharper phrase, louder, commanding. The others resumed, voices shaking the stone. The shadows hissed once more, then receded, melting back into the dark from which they had come. Their cries echoed long after their forms were gone. Silence crushed the chamber. My chest heaved. The dagger's glow dimmed, leaving only silver veins faintly alive. My knees buckled, and I sank back to the floor. Valenti's voice cut through the quiet, calm, certain. He lives. Candles guttered, incense thinned. The cardinals rose as one. Their eyes passed over me, not with relief, not with thanks, but with the cold appraisal of men who had tested a weapon and found it sharp. Valenti approached, his gaze steady. He bent, his lips close to my ear. You were not offering, Bellini. You were proof. He took my arm, lifted me to my feet, and whispered, so only I could hear. The dagger answered your faith. That makes you our custodian now. Do not mistake survival for choice. My hand tightened around the blade. It was warm, almost pulsing, like a second heart. And in that moment, I knew. My prayer for work had been answered. But the job was one no man sane would accept. I should have felt relief when I staggered out of the catacombs alive. Instead, the weight of the stone above me seemed to follow into every corridor of the Vatican. The dagger still throbbed faintly against my ribs as if it refused to sleep, as if it wanted me to remember every scream. That night I lay in a guest cell, its walls bare, its crucifix crooked. I stared at the ceiling until my eyes burned. Every time I closed them, I saw the shadows rising, claws stretching toward me. Their laughter scraped inside my skull. Sleep came in fragments. In one dream, I was back in the chamber, but this time, the dagger slipped from my hand. The shadows fell on me, their weight crushing, their heat searing. I woke gasping, sweat soaking my robe, fingers clawing for the hilt that was not there. I sat at the small desk, lit a candle, and tried to steady my breathing. Rome slept beyond the walls, blissfully unaware. My hand shook as I traced the wood grain with my fingertip, whispering the prayer my mother had taught me. Our Father, deliver us from evil. But the words felt hollow. And then Valenti's voice returned to me, sharp as a blade. He had spoken it just before we left the catacombs, his hand heavy on my shoulder. Do not think tonight was victory, Bellini. It was only the beginning. The war has not yet started. The words gnawed at me. If this was not the war, then what was? If the things I had fought, the claws, the laughter, the burning eyes, were only preludes, then what horror waited at the end of this path? Was I foolish enough to think I could survive it when so many before me had not? The thought of running pressed hard against my ribs. I told myself I could leave. Nothing bound me but fear. I could walk out the Porta Sant'Anna before dawn, take a train north, vanish into some quiet village. I could fix cars, sweep floors, live nameless again. The thought steadied me for a moment, then another followed, colder. If I ran, who would hold the dagger next time? The cardinals would find another. But the folder I had glimpsed in Sala Regia burned in my mind. Pages of faces, all dead. Men who had been tested and had not returned. I pressed my palms into my eyes until sparks bloomed. My chest ached. I thought of Naples, of the explosion that ended my service, the moment when glass rained from the sky and I thought I would never rise. I had prayed then too, not for life, but for meaning. When I woke in the hospital, alive though others had not been, I told myself meaning would come later. Maybe this was later. But why me? I was not holy. I was not pure. I was a soldier who drank too much, a man who lied to women, who cursed God as often as he praised him. Yet in the chamber, when I raised the dagger and shouted, "Deliver us from evil," something had answered. Not the cardinals, not the walls, something deeper. I blew out the candle and knelt on the cold floor. My knees protested. My back ached, but I forced myself down. The words came again, broken at first, then steady. Our Father, who art in heaven. This time they did not feel hollow. This time the weight of them pressed into my bones, steadier than steel. I realized then, the choice was never between fleeing and staying. The choice was between denying what I had seen and bearing it. And if I denied it, the darkness would remain for someone else to carry. I thought of the man in black who had spoken my name in St. Peter's, as if he had known me long before. I thought of Valenti's whisper. The dagger answered your faith. I bowed lower, my forehead against stone. If you ask this of me, I whispered into the silence, then let me be enough, not for them, for you. The candle flared once, though I had snuffed it. A draught stirred the crucifix on the wall, straightening it. I breathed deep, my heart still shook, but not from fear alone, from resolve. When dawn bled over Rome, I had not slept, but I had decided. I would not leave. Not because the cardinals demanded it, not because Valenti had tested me, but because I believed. The morning after the rite, Valenti summoned me. I found him waiting at the end of a narrow corridor beneath the apostolic palace, his crimson skullcap shadowed beneath a single lamp. He carried no attendants, no guards, only a ring of keys that jingled like iron teeth. "Walk with me," he said. We descended deeper than I thought the Vatican could go. The stair twisted like a screw into the earth, the air damp and old. Along the walls, frescoes peeled to reveal even older stone, carved with symbols no pilgrim was meant to see. At the bottom, Valenti unlocked a heavy gate of black iron. Beyond lay a corridor lined with shelves, shelves not of books, but of boxes. Each box was marked with a name, a date, and a seal burned into the wood. Dust lay thick, but the seals glimmered faintly as if heat still lingered. "The Archivum Obscurum," Valenti said. His voice echoed flat. "The Church keeps many records. These are not among them." He pulled a box from the shelf and set it on a table. With deliberate care, he broke the seal and lifted the lid. Inside lay a folder thick with papers, photographs, scraps of cloth. He opened the folder. The first page bore a photograph of a man in a robe like mine. His face was slack, eyes rolled white. Beneath it, a single word: defecate, failed. Valenti turned another page, another photograph, another man. His robe was torn, his chest blackened with burns. Same word beneath. Page after page, face after face. Men of different nations, ages, all ending in failure, all dead. I swallowed hard. "How many?" "Enough to fill this hall," Valenti said. "For centuries we have tested, soldiers, priests, scholars, all chosen for their skill, their knowledge, their courage. Yet when placed before the shadows, their weapons faltered. Their prayers died on their lips. The dagger remained silent." He closed the folder with a snap. "Until you." I felt the weight of the dagger at my side, its hilt wrapped in cloth beneath my robe. "Why me?" I asked, my voice rough. Valenti studied me, his eyes sharp but not unkind. "Because you still believe, not in us, not in the Vatican, in him. That faith, unadorned, unpolished, is what the blade demands. It is sacramentum arma, an armament of sacrament, steel infused with relic dust, tempered not by fire but by devotion. In the wrong hands, it is stone. In the right, it becomes covenant." I shook my head. "I am no saint." "No," Valenti agreed, "but saints are often too proud for service. You are humble enough to kneel, strong enough to stand, broken enough to be remade." He placed the folder back into the box and slid it onto the shelf. I stared down the corridor. Shelf after shelf stretched into shadow, each bearing the name of someone who had tried. Men forgotten, their failures locked away like sins unconfessed. My stomach turned cold. "Why show me this?" I asked. "Because you must know the cost," Valenti said. "The dagger is not gift, it is trial. It chose you, yes, but it will test you again and again. And if your faith falters even once, you will join them." His hand rested briefly on my shoulder, firm, heavy. "The next trial will not be claws in the dark. It will be temptation, promises whispered in your ear, truth twisted against you. The blade will know if you yield, and it will abandon you if you do." I met his eyes. "And if it abandons me?" Then Rome burns, Valenti said simply. The silence pressed in, thicker than stone. I felt the dagger at my side suddenly heavier. Valenti turned and began walking back toward the stair. Midnight, 3 nights hence, the covenant must be renewed. Be ready. I followed, though each step felt like a descent rather than an ascent. That night, alone in my cell, I set the dagger on the desk before me. Candlelight flickered along its blade, silver veins pulsing faintly as if with a heartbeat. I whispered into the silence, not sure if to God or the weapon itself. If you chose me, then let me be enough. The veins brightened once, just once, then stilled. The Archivum Obscurum had shown me the failures, but not the reason. That came 3 nights later. Cardinal Valenti summoned me again, this time not to the Library of Shadows, but to a chamber above ground, an office with windows that overlooked the square of St. Peter's. Pilgrims thronged below, waving flags, singing hymns. Their voices rose like birdsong. From up here, it sounded almost innocent. Valenti stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back. They sing to him, he said. They believe he is only man. They must believe it. I frowned. Him? Valenti turned. His face was tight, every wrinkle etched deeper. The Holy Father, Adrian. I felt a chill though the sun blazed outside. What about him? Valenti gestured toward a chair. I sat. He remained standing. The covenant you tasted in the chamber is not new. It was struck centuries ago when plague and war left Rome bleeding. The church made an arrangement to protect the world, to keep the hollow ones at bay. My stomach tightened. By feeding them? He did not flinch. By offering sorrow, by offering blood, each rite renews the bond, a lesser evil to restrain a greater. I slammed my hand on the desk before I realized it. That's not covenant, that's surrender. Valenti's eyes narrowed. Do you think armies could stand against them? You saw the shadows yourself. They devour steel. They mock fire. Without the covenant, the hollow would spill across this earth like flood water. My voice dropped, raw. And the Pope? What does he have to do with this? For the first time since I had met him, Valenti hesitated. His lips pressed thin. His gaze drifted back to the window where pilgrims waved and cheered. Finally he spoke, barely above a whisper. The covenant has a vessel, a focus. Once it was a chalice, once a relic, but a vessel breaks. So the hollow demanded something that renews itself, flesh, blood, holiness itself. My breath caught. No, he turned back to me. His eyes told me the truth before his words did. Yes, Adrian carries it. Within him, he is their host. The room swam. I gripped the arms of the chair to keep from falling. You're telling me the Pope, the vicar of Christ, is possessed? Not possessed, Valenti said quickly, too quickly. Occupied, balanced. He is both. He carries the hollow within him so that it does not roam free. His prayers bind it. His body contains it. As long as the rites continue, the world remains intact. I shook my head. That's not faith. That's blasphemy. Valenti's hand struck the desk, sharp as a gunshot. It is necessity. Silence burned between us. Below, the pilgrims cheered as a white figure appeared on the balcony. Pope Adrian raised his hand in blessing. His face was radiant, his voice carrying across the square. But I could not unsee what Valenti had told me. His body a vessel, his flesh a cage. Behind his eyes, something else watching. I whispered, almost to myself, and if he fails? Valenti's expression hardened. Then the hollow walks free, and Rome burns first. He leaned closer. That is why the dagger was given to you. It is not only for shadows in the catacombs, it is for him should the vessel break. My throat dried. The image filled my mind. Me, standing with the blade against the Pope while pilgrims sang hymns to the man I would have to kill. I rose, shaking my head. You want me to be executioner? No, Valenti said. Guardian, do not mistake them. The difference is faith. I walked out before he could speak more. That night, I sat in my cell, the dagger laid across my knees. Its veins pulsed faintly, silver against dark steel, as if it had overheard everything. The Pope's voice still rang in my ears, blessing the crowds, but I remembered Valenti's words. He carries it within him. I stared at the dagger until my eyes blurred. If it comes to him or the world, I whispered, what do you ask of me? The blade throbbed once and the candle flame bent sideways, though no wind stirred. I did not sleep. Midnight in the Sala Regia felt like Judgment Day. The grand hall, once painted with triumphs of popes and kings, had been stripped of splendor. The chandeliers were dark, the frescoes cloaked by smoke. Candles lined the floor in a vast circle of blood-red wax, their flames bending inward as if the very air leaned toward the center. At that center stood Pope Adrian VII. He was dressed not in white, but in a simple robe of black, his mitre absent, his hands clasped as though in prayer. Around him, cardinals formed a ring, their crimson skull caps like wounds against shadow. Each held a rosary bound with silver links, each voice muttering Latin incantations older than any missal. I stood outside the circle, dagger hidden beneath my robe, its weight hot against my ribs. My role had been made clear. When the hollow spirit was forced from its vessel, I was to strike. The blade would pierce its form, seal it, end it. Perfect plan, clean, controlled. Valenti passed behind me, his hand briefly on my shoulder. Be steady, he whispered. Tonight the world will see dawn only if we succeed. The chanting grew louder. The candles flared high, wax running down like blood. The air thickened until my lungs ached. At the circle's center, the Pope lifted his head. For an instant, I saw only the man, old, weary, his face lined with devotion. Then his eyes opened, and they were not human. They burned like coal. The chanting faltered, but rose again, desperate. The Pope's lips moved. His voice came in two layers, one the gentle tone the world adored, the other a growl that shook the marble. You think you can draw me out? A cardinal shouted. In nomine Patris! His voice cracked. The Pope smiled, a terrible curve. Why would I leave? This body is sanctified. It is the holiest vessel on earth. You chained me to it, and I learned to wear it. Do you think I will abandon the strongest armor I have ever known? The circle trembled. Several cardinals staggered. One fell to his knees, clutching his chest. Valenti barked an order, his voice cutting through the panic. Hold the right! Force it out! They shouted the incantation louder, a wall of Latin. The Pope threw back his head and laughed, the sound ringing like shattered bells. Then he moved. He did not wait for the spirit to be expelled. He raised his hands and, with a motion too swift for an old man, struck the floor. The marble cracked. Shock waves rolled through the hall, toppling candles, shattering glass. Cardinals screamed. One was thrown against the wall, his skull cap rolling across the stones. Another clutched his throat, gasping, as if unseen hands held him. The Pope, no, the thing within him, turned his gaze on me. His eyes flared brighter, and the gentle voice of Adrian layered over the growl. Custodian! My blood froze. He stepped from the circle, robes trailing ash. The cardinals tried to bar his way, but he swept his arm, and three were cast aside like dolls. You carry the dagger, he said. Show me its bite. My hand closed on the hilt beneath my robe. My knees wanted to buckle. Strike him, and I would pierce not only spirit but pontiff. Fail, and the world would drown in shadow. Valenti shouted through the chaos, Bellini, remember why you were chosen! The Pope lunged. His speed was not of age, nor of man. His hand closed around my throat, lifting me from the floor as though I weighed nothing. His eyes bore into mine, and for a heartbeat, I glimpsed endless halls of fire. I gasped, fingers reaching for the dagger. Its hilt met my palm, warm, alive. The Pope's smile widened. Yes, use it, end me, save them, and in doing so your soul will carry the cost. My vision blurred, my chest burned. I drew the dagger, its silver veins pulsed bright, flaring against the dark. The Pope's face, rimmed in coal fire, leaned close. Choose. His hand closed on my throat, and I felt bone grind. My vision pulsed red at the edges. The dagger flared hot in my palm, demanding release. The cardinals shouted, their voices rising like a wall of Latin thunder. Valenti's command cut sharp. Form the circle. I was flung to the floor. The Pope, no, the thing that wore his flesh, stepped back into the center. Blood was poured onto the marble, each cardinal slicing his own palm, letting the crimson fall. The circle completed, glowing wet. The chanting grew savage. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, the Pope shrieked, the sound layered with fire and steel. His eyes burned like furnaces. His flesh writhed as though two beings warred inside it. For a heartbeat, I saw the old man's face straining against the surface, lips forming silent prayer. Then the growl consumed him again. He hurled himself at the circle. An invisible wall stopped him short, the blood hissing where his feet touched it. Sparks flew, the smell of iron and sulfur choking the air. The cardinals strained, their chants shaking the frescoes overhead. Cracks spidered across the marble. Valenti shouted, "Bellini, the dagger, now!" I stumbled to my feet, blade blazing silver in my hand. But when I raised it, my knees locked. Every instinct told me to strike, but every beat of my faith screamed the opposite. This was the Pope, the vicar of Christ, the man who had blessed millions. Could I drive steel into his heart and call it salvation? The demon laughed, voice booming through the hall. "Strike me, custodian. Stab your holy father and see what heaven says of you." The blood circle shook. One cardinal collapsed, clutching his chest. The line broke. The Pope surged forward, slamming me against a pillar. Stone cracked. My ribs screamed. I drove the dagger upward. Sparks flared as it met his flesh, but did not pierce. His laughter thundered. Not enough. "You hesitate!" I shouted through clenched teeth. "Deliver us from evil!" The blade answered. Silver veins blazed, searing. The Pope howled, stumbling back, his skin smoking where the light had touched. The circle reformed, blood flowing anew. Chants rose, desperate. The Pope writhed, his body splitting in flickers, the demon's shadow stretching taller than the frescoed saints above. Valenti roared, his own blood dripping onto the floor. "Strike while the vessel falters!" I stepped forward, dagger raised high. My hand shook, my heart slammed. The Pope's eyes flickered human for an instant. Adrian's voice, fragile as paper, slipped through the growl. "Please!" I froze. The demon surged back, roaring, clawing through his throat. "Weak! You cannot kill your shepherd!" The circle strained, cracking, blood sizzling. Torches burst, smoke choking the hall. One by one, cardinals fell, but still they chanted, their voices shredded with pain. I screamed, half prayer, half defiance, and drove forward. The blade met chest. Sparks and light cascaded, searing the air. The Pope shrieked, his voice splitting into two, Adrian's and the demon's, one pleading, one cursing. The hall shook. Frescoes rained dust, shadows crawled the walls like spiders. The dagger burned hotter, nearly fusing to my hand. My vision blurred white. Valenti's voice pierced through chaos. "One strike is not enough. You must finish it, Bellini!" The Pope fell to his knees, smoke curling from his mouth. Eyes burning twin suns. He looked at me, both of him, saint and serpent, and whispered in a voice that cut through the roar, "Do it." My hands trembled, my soul trembled. The dagger pulsed once more, brighter than any flame, and I raised it high. The dagger blazed in my grip, heat searing through bone. My knees shook, my throat raw with prayer. The Pope, Adrian, knelt before me, his eyes twin furnaces of shadow and sorrow. Two voices wrestled from his mouth, the growl of the hollow and the whisper of the man. "Do it!" I raised the blade higher. Every muscle screamed against it. Every fragment of faith demanded it. "Deliver us," I cried, "from evil!" I drove the dagger down. Steel met flesh. Light erupted. The hall exploded in brilliance. Brighter than dawn, brighter than fire. The frescoes of saints dissolved into white. The cardinals screamed their chants louder, though their voices were lost in the roar. Blood boiled on marble. Shadows writhed, clawing the walls, shrieking in defiance. The Pope's body convulsed, arched backward, mouth opening wide as the hollow tore against the steel. His scream split into two, one the plea of a man, one the roar of a beast. The dagger seared deeper, silver veins spreading like lightning. My hands blistered, skin burning, but I held fast. "By your cross, by your blood, bind it!" I shouted. The shadows clawed at me, hot as brands, cold as tombs. My vision blurred, but the blade's light cut them, shredding their forms into smoke. The Pope's eyes flickered once, clear and human. "Thank you," he whispered. Then the fire consumed him. With a final roar, the hollow spirit collapsed inward, sucked into the blade. The light flared, then dimmed, settling into a steady glow. The Pope fell still. Silence crushed the hall. Smoke coiled. The frescoes dripped dust. The cardinals stood trembling, their faces pale, their robes spattered with blood. One by one, they dropped to their knees. Valenti staggered forward, clutching his chest. His voice rasped yet carried. "It is done." I looked down at the body before me. Adrian VII, Pontiff of Rome, lay with eyes closed, his face at peace for the first time since I had seen him. But lifeless, my chest heaved. My hand still gripped the dagger, its blade warm, veins glowing faintly. I wanted to drop it, but it clung to me as if fused. Valenti's eyes met mine. There was grief there, but also iron. No one must know. The world cannot hear this truth. They will believe he died of illness. A successor will be chosen. The church will endure. "And me?" I asked, voice hoarse. Valenti placed his hand on mine, over the dagger. "You are the custodian now, guardian of what no one else must see. The blade chose you, and it will not release you." The cardinals murmured assent. Some crossed themselves, others wept silently. I stood alone in the center of the shattered hall, the Pope's body at my feet, the dagger burning in my hand. I felt neither triumph nor peace, only weight. That night, I sat in my cell and wrote by trembling candlelight. My hands blistered, my robe still reeked of smoke and blood. The covenant is sealed, the hollow is bound. But the cost was the shepherd himself. The world above will never know. They will pray to a memory, not the man. And I, Marco Bellini, will carry this secret until my last breath. The dagger rests beside me, veins pulsing like a second heart. I know now it will never leave me. I am its keeper, its servant, or perhaps its prisoner. I am the custodian majoris, the eternal guardian. The world will wake tomorrow to bells of mourning and hymns of hope. They will not know that their peace rests on the blade of one man and the silence of those who buried the truth. Perhaps that is mercy. Perhaps that is damnation. But it is enough. I set down the pen. The candle guttered. The dagger glowed faintly in the dark. And I understood. My prayer for work had been answered. The job was eternity.